It's an inside joke. Oh, hey, we're on. It's the Church Solutions podcast. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacey.
We will introduce our guest in a moment. Thanks, folks, for joining us. This is episode number 523. Count them, 523, and a lot more that we don't know. We have no idea where the other ones are. We did some years ago, and they're out there floating around somewhere on the interweb, I guess. I don't know. But how are you, Steve?
I'm doing great. I'm a bachelor this week. Wife's out of town.
Right. Your wife's out of town. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure. Do you still have the daycare center going, though?
I'm going to be in charge of a small daycare this weekend. So, yes, it's going to be me on my own, which I haven't done before. So,
Steve has lots of grandkids now, and they're all little, and they all run around and tear the house up.
Yeah.
So I call it the Lacey childcare. All right. So where was I going with this? So we have a guest, and without further ado, let me read his bio. I'll read a edited version of it because if I read his whole bio, we'll be out of time. But I'll read his bio. Our guest is Dr. Chris Forbes, and he is a strategic foresight consultant specializing in faith-based nonprofits, global missions, and leadership development. He trains ministry leaders to recognize emerging trends, test assumptions. I have a lot of assumptions he could test, and build forward-looking strategies that remain steady throughout disruption. And there's lots of disruption, right? He is the founder of the Future Commission 2050, an initiative exploring the development of moral realism futures as a practice among ministry leaders. I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to ask him. I do have a little bit of an idea what a strategic foresight consultant is, but I want to ask him here in a moment, and Steve and I will ask him a bunch of questions related to this. But anyhow, welcome, Dr. Forbes, to our Church Solutions podcast. How are you?
I'm well, and appreciate it. You can call me Chris. You don't need to call me doctor.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, that's good. Thank you for being with us too. And
It's great to be
I know
here.
you have no clue. You have no clue who we are. This podcast is sponsored by StreamingChurch.tv, which is one of our products, and so just wanted to get that out there. But So I know Steve's chomping at the bit to ask you questions. I'm going to ask you a couple right off the bat here. Okay. I'll ask you a twofold question. First of all, what is a strategic foresight consultant? How does that apply to people involved in ministry? And if I'm a pastor watching or listening to this podcast, why should I care about this whole topic of future and all that? Because God's in control. Why should I worry about the future?
Well, okay. It's about three questions, but if I can remember, just remind me if I get lost. But,
I stumped you already.
Yeah. So what a strategic foresight consultant means to me is I work with ministry leaders and helping them recognize the signals, trends, and drivers affecting the future around them. And foresight uses a systematic methodology to look at the signals, trends, and drivers. And a lot of people, everybody thinks about the future, but very few people have a system for understanding the future. We see things happening around us, but not every signal that we notice is on the same timeline. You know, it might mature 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out. Not everything has the same importance or impact on our ministry. And so what I do is I try to help people learn how to recognize the signals of the future that are present now. And the future 20 years from now, signals of it are visible now. It's just weaker. And signals in the next decade, kind of that transition period between where we are now and where we're going to be 20 years from now. We're in this kind of what I like to call the Crossfade Period in that middle section. And it's sort of like, in audio, since you have a lot of people maybe are technical, as you fade down one, you're listening to one song and you fade down that one song as like a DJ would, and then you're fading in the new song. there's that kind of that moment between where is it the beat of the last song or the beat of the next song that you're hearing the most? And that's kind of the period that is, I believe, is the next decade of lots of transition. Um, so my goal in Foresight is to help people think like futurists and apply that in the ministry context.
Okay. So as a pastor listening to this, how does that practically apply to me?
Well, first of all churches engage in futures thinking because all churches plan. We all plan with assumptions about where things are going to be. And I've worked a lot in denominational and missions work, and we have these long range visions to engage by a certain year, or we have people with tendency to project where things are now onto the next 10 years, or we have people setting uh, kind of predictions out there, and those are all based on assumptions. Short-term projections assume that the variables of today are going to be still around, and they may not be. And so what I try to do is help people kind of slow down and think about the future. Um, since the future is present now, is not a big rush to think if it's going to happen 10 years from now. So I know there's a lot of things going on in the ministry, and in ministry we always have this term, the tyranny of the urgent. We're all got a lot of things. People come in our office with their hair on fire. We got to solve that problem. We got to think about those things. And so what often in my Insight Futures Labs, people come and say, we never really give ourselves time to think about these things, to think strategically about the future, because we're always so reacting. There's a word that in Foresight we use called, or a term called educated incapacity. That is that kind of that condition where we're really good at what we do. Operationally, we're very successful, and we know how to fine tune all the things that we do in our ministry. And I'm sure that on your listeners, some really highly skilled leaders. But one of the problems with what educational incapacity is we're so good at what we do that we're the last to see the things that are outside of what we do. And so what Foresight does is kind of gives you a method to look outside and see what those drivers of change are that are pressing in, that could affect the future and could impact your ministry and all the plans that you have. So I think for a ministry leader, the value is mostly creativity. Jay McGonigal from the Institute for the Future says the real value in foresight is not prediction, but it is creativity and being able to anticipate. You've heard the expression, get ahead of the curve. Well, there's literally a curve. There's an adoption curve with new ideas. They kind of emerge as innovations, and then they become early adoption, early majority, late majority. A lot of times in ministry, we're a little behind the curve, and so we kind of see things when they're already obvious. And what Foresight does is it helps you kind of see what's coming and kind of align your ministry that way.
So I was encouraged that initially, the skeptic in me is like, we're having a futurist on the podcast. Why is his opinion any better than ours? So I was encouraged to hear that you say you guys have a system that takes all of the signals that are out there. And I'll have a secondary question here, but one of the first ones is there's the signal to noise ratio, right? Because there's a bunch of signals out there that could send you to the left and you end up going to the right and all that. How do you discern these signals, and do you weigh them with a certain amount of gravity and throw them into some prediction model, churn it around and have it say, here's what's going on? Or how does that happen? How do you discern those signals, and what are some of those signals?
Well, that's a good question. One thing I would say, while I'm a futurist, a futurist is someone who uses the method of strategic foresight for thinking. It's not that I'm an expert in the future or in, particularly whatever ministry leader's context is. What I bring is those, like you said, those tools and those frameworks. So one way to filter out the noise is we start in foresight with kind of a domain map. And we maybe not used to thinking in terms of this, but thinking in terms of our ministries as part of a system. And so there are aspects of our ministry that have systems that need to survive for us to continue doing our ministry. And so what we do is we try to nail down what those are. System thinking in the Bible would be where Paul says we are part of a body, and not everybody is the same part of the body, or we're a temple, we're a building, we're a structure. So there are aspects of this kind of thinking. And so what we do is we filter for those things that would have the most probability of impact, and then we rank them. And so for what I do, Insight Futures is to provoke a conversation about the future with leaders. So a ministry team, a strategy team, and a mission board, or some other nonprofit like a school or whatever. Those leaders get together and they start brainstorming what are the signals that could impact the domain, and then we rank them. Excuse me. We rank them according to probability and impact. So if it has, even if it's high probability but it has a low impact, low impact is not something we worry about. So there's a lot of things out there that have a low impact. You know what those are once you have the discussion with each other and you share that creativity. There are also things that could have a high impact, but there's a low probability, and those are wild cards. Those are things that we just keep an eye on, but we don't know. It could be a global war, it could be another pandemic, it could be some other topic, but that's a kind of contingency plans for those kind of things. Then there are those things that it never fails. I've never been in a lab where ministry leaders weren't able to come up with a litany of signals that could impact their future. And there's the high probability, high impact. Those are things you should work on now. So when I talk about foresight and thinking about the future, those high probability, high impact things, we know they're coming. One time I did a lab with a group of leaders, and one that was like a vice president of a ministry, and he said, "Wow, we're not working on any of those." And I'm like, "Hey, well, take a picture of all those things, or write them down, or something, because they're coming." But there's also that kind of thing where it's the high impact but medium probability. We don't know when, but it's probably pretty likely that it's going to impact us. So we got to kind of look for those things. So that is kind of the matrix as far as the probability impact, and then also the timeline, because not everything is going to be on the same horizon. We think in terms of 3 horizons. Horizon 1 is the system that we're currently in. And those are things that usually are kind of at the top end of their curve or kind of the back end of their curve. They're slated for losing their strategic fit over time, and probably in the next 5-10 years. So we know what those things are. Intuitively, we can talk about those and kind of plot those. There's also the H3. Those are things that are early. They're weird. They're strange, but we know they're coming. AI, robotics, these other things that they're not fully there yet, like hydrogen fuel or economic changes or whatever. Those are things that we can kind of keep an eye on for the future. And but Horizon 2, that's the next decade or so, that transition, like I said, the crossfade. That is what I try to help leaders develop scenarios and understand. Bill Sharp is a British guy, and he developed the 3 horizons. And he calls that moment in between, that crossfade period, he calls it the Kairos moment. And if you know from your maybe seminary days, the Kairos is a kind of a term for time. There's chronos time, which we all know is like, chronology, your watch time. But there's also that kind of opportune time, the Kairos moment.
Yeah.
And it's what Christ referred to when he says, you understand the aspects of the world, of nature, but you don't know what Kairos you're in. And what my goal is to help people recognize that Kairos moment. I think that's a partnership with the Holy Spirit. It's a partnership with prayer and discernment. And ultimately, it's an act of stewardship, because leaders have to, like Jesus said, count the cost and realize whether or not they have what it takes to complete. That's probably a long answer, but
Yeah.
Well,
So
I let me jump in here real quick, Steve. I'm sorry, but let's talk a little bit about time, okay? Like Luke 12:56, interpreting the present time. So, what, in your opinion, Chris, what is that one trend, meta trend, or whatever you want to call it, that's shaping the world that most churches are just missing it?
well, first of all, I think technological revolution it's more than a trend, it's a driver, and it's going to shape a lot. I think that one thing that people are underestimating is the impact AI is having on anthropology and how people perceive what it means to be a person. And I think over time, we're going to have a lot of confusion about what it means to be a person. And what ministry leaders need is a thicker account of what it means to be human. And that is something that, that should be our forte: human formation, discipleship. The other thing that AI does, and this is probably touching into the area where you are, it has the ability to produce high quality, um, what people like to call them deep fakes or whatever, but it's really just content. It can create a lot of content. It can create a lot of videos and create audio, and people can write. Somebody could sit in the pew and write a better song that's on the stage right now. And so, what happens in that context is when and in a world where expressive individualism is so rampant that people are trying to do their own personal branding and become an influencer and whatever, and our content looks like another kind of influencer, and then it can be easily replicated by AI. It turns that performative aspect into something that people won't want that anymore. And so where I think the future is heading is, while digital we'll move from a digital mediated environment to a person mediated digital environment. And so what happens not on the platform is what happens on the platform is not as important as far as attracting people, like that, that kind of attractional model, as it is for what happens around the table and deeper formation around the table. Because when the question is not only what does it mean to be a person, because of robots and because of AI, but also what is real. Are you real? Like I had recently, I was doing my audiobook, and I was trying to get an audio version of my book. So I worked through the audio book company, Audible, to audition a voice talent. And, I'm working with this guy, Terry from Iowa. I'm great. He's doing a great job. But then when Terry asked me to pay him, I'm sending a payment to some lady. I don't know this name. And I'm like, this is really confusing to me. So I go back to Audible and say, hey, I don't understand. And they said, don't pay. Let's see. And it's AI. It was AI. So what I'm saying is that is a big trend. Anthropology, formation, table, and we've been geared up for attraction, for broadcast, for influence, for content. More content is not what people are going to be looking for. If you understand what I'm saying, real human experience, and you see that already with young people. They're migrating toward, liturgy. They're migrating toward ancient, like Bible sales are up. Print Bible sales are up like 2,000%. People are wanting tactile, real. And so they're going to want to get in relationship with people in real. There's very few places where you can sit around a table and talk about meaning, and that one place is church. And so there's a great opportunity, a Kairos moment coming for us in that. So I would say that's a big one. There are more. I don't know if I want to dominate all on that one topic, but yeah.
So how do you go about? You just talked about one of the signals out there, and there's a signal out there like we're going to become more AI centric, and then a lot of people's responses to that, they assume a bunch of stuff. And I just listened to a bio of the founder of Nvidia, and he was talking about they were trying to build this kind of supercomputer kind of thing out of GPUs. And one of the first companies or people to take it up was the radiology area. And because they found the radiology can do it faster, better than anybody could. And so there was this big prediction that all these people entering med school and stuff don't go into radiology. He says it's going to get wiped out by AI.
Yeah.
But then he said, fast forward a few years up towards today, what happened was completely the opposite. He said that the radiologists were able to do much more radiology work.
Yeah, they're using radiology on everything.
They became much more productive.
Yeah.
And so it made their job much cheaper, which encouraged the doctors to prescribe more. Let's do another MRI,
Yeah.
And the productivity level went up. And in the meantime, he said those that were all scared from getting radiology didn't go into the business. And now there's a major desire because that whole area has boomed, and they need more radiologists because it's become a much more productive and lucrative, which was the exact opposite of how people initially reacted to the signal. So how do you avoid reading a signal and anticipate, well, that means this, and so therefore I'm gonna, you know what I'm trying to say here?
I know what you're saying exactly. And working with ministry leaders, I found that they'll pick a future, a projection, a promotion, a probability, and they'll stick with it. And what we do in Foresight is we think in simultaneous multiples. Okay, so instead of one future, what we do in the labs is we gather together and we sort the signals, we identify the drivers, and then we take those drivers, 6 to 8 or however many are really determined to be the most impactful on the domain. And then we develop scenarios, kind of heuristically. We will take the baseline and we will project out what the drivers look like in a baseline future. Then we will take one in a disruptive future, a collapse future. That's the one, most people don't want to consider the collapse, but consider like the bad stuff could happen too. So we actually play out a scenario of the drivers, how they would impact if things were to collapse. What would push that way? And then also a transformation, and not transformation like the future we prefer, but how it might, like what you just described, how a game changer could emerge for like the radiology. Well, there are so these are all three descriptive heuristic scenarios that we kind of use. And what we do in our labs, we would take those back to our stakeholders, play them out in conversations, and then kind of think through, if this were to happen, what would we do? Or do you see any of this happening? Kind of play that out. And then we come back and use those scenarios to develop not only an awareness and reshape those. We also then kind of develop what is a preferred future? What is the future we want to pull toward? There's a lot of push in Foresight. There's the push of the future. There's the weight of the past. The weight of the past is what kind of churches can intuitively know what I mean. Like the shape of the institution in the past, and then what can we pull toward? There's the pull of the future. That's where we want to go. So that's one of the reasons why I call it the Insight Futures Labs. It's insight because it's inciting, it's provoking a conversation. But there's also kind of like an aspect of change. There is that remember aspect that we're so good at in church, and we should be, because we don't want to lose sight of the fundamentals of our faith. We want to be honored. We want to honor those who stood before us, and and carry a lot of our traditions together. But there's also a revolt aspect of the future where it's change, and nobody likes change. So the idea of insight is also a different way of thinking. I've worked in ministry for 35 years, and we're probably the ones who coined the phrase in ministry. We never did it that way before. And so, like, the idea is, let's consider what would happen if we didn't do it that way. So I think that's where it is. And then what you do is, like, as you have those scenarios, what you do is then you kind of watch for the triggers, like that you discussed. Like, these are things that could pretend. Like, you think of the church in the local. It's been in a part of the metro area, and then the metro area around it has changed, and most of the members are not from that area. They drive in, and they become like this island in a completely different neighborhood, and then at some point they decide, oh, we better move out by the highway, or whatever we do. I'm not judging any of that. I'm just saying that we're so in ministry kind of the last to notice. Like, Oklahoma City, I was working with one group, and didn't realize that in the last 10 years, the last decade, between then and the last census, we became the 20th largest metro area in the United States. No one even knew that. So, so I hope that what that does is, like, thinking in different, multiple futures. So future studies is about multiple futures.
All right. If I'm a pastor listening to this and I could only do one thing this week to be future ready, what would be the one thing this week that you would recommend?
I think the biggest thing you can do is slow down. As soon as you see something you think that has impact for your ministry, just slow down and assess it. Think about it. That's one thing I do when I look at a signal, is I try to analyze it in different ways before I decide what it means. So, okay, am I getting the straight skinny on this, or is there some overlaid narrative that's being pushed on me? What is this? Okay, it looks like it's going to impact the future, but when? When will it be at its peak? Is it early? Is it in the middle? Is it, where is it? There's a quality of it. So, and I don't have time to go into all this, but there is kind of this theory of panarchy, like the Ecclesiastes says, to everything there is a season, a time for, all these different things. Everything is either at a place of, is it a place of beginning? Is it a place of organizing? Is it at a place of conservation where it's growing? Is it a place of collapse where things are coming apart? So, it's like a forest, a forest grows and grows and grows and becomes more and more successful. And the more successful it becomes, the more brittle it becomes. And potentially, with all the leaves on the floor of the forest and all the broken branches, one lightning strike and it's a deal changer. And then what happens to the forest? Well, it starts over and new things emerge. New plants begin to succeed and thrive. New species begin to form. So, like, a signal has that kind of a quality. It could be a collapse signal. It could be a signal that things are going to keep going. And then, kind of, once you do that, you've put it on a timeline, you thought about that, then you think about the impact. Is it really something that's going to have an impact? Or is it just fascinating to me? Like, I get way into politics. I get way into lots of issues that, are just distracting because I find them, fascinating, but they may not necessarily have an impact on my ministry. So slow down.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Go ahead, Steve. I think that's excellent.
I was going to ask regarding, talking about slowing down, it kind of points to what's the time frame that what's going on in your work. It's not 6 months from now, is it? Or a year from now? Or is it 5 years, 10, 20? Because there's certain trends going on right now, and pastors are going to be anxious to possibly jump on them. And what is the time frame in your work?
Well, you're right. It is subjective. What I do is I have the Insight Futures Labs. There are 3 labs, and they take we take a 2-day lab. It's like 6 hours, 2 days in a row, and I teach foresight literacy. So what that does is it helps people recognize and understand what the tools of foresight are, so they begin to look at those signals and begin to place them and plot them in that way. And then we brainstorm a lot in a group, and then we take a month off and we go look for those signals that we brainstormed and other signals. So I would say foresight timeline kind of emerges out of that conversation. And then the 3rd lab is foresight. So that's foresight practice. We come back and develop our scenarios. We develop the kind of understand what the drivers are, then develop our scenarios. And then we test them, take them back and kind of stress test them, wind tunnel test them with real life people, real life situations. Usually that takes about a month or so. And then we come back in foresight planning. And that foresight planning includes that preferred future, and it includes what we call backcasting. And so what we would do is go out. So that's where your timeline, I'm answering your question in a long way, but is, are we going out 10 years, or are we going out 15 years? Are we going out 28 years? We look back as far as we look forward to see kind of where we are. And then we develop a backcast plan. If this is where we're going to be in 2050, probably because of the scenarios, what does it look like in 2045? What does it look like in 2040, 2030, all the way back? And then we have kind of a roadmap that we can kind of work with. Generally, when I use foresight, I have my 3 horizons, and this is just how I do it. It's not like the orthodox way. There's not one way. There's if you ever read a book called Good Ancestor, they think 200 years out. So what I do is I kind of have like the 2020 to 2030, because I go back as, that's H1. And then I have 2030, 2040. That's kind of the horizon 2. At 2040 and beyond, 2050, that's kind of where I place it. As we get further out, the variables change. That's why you use the scenarios. There's more variables now, like 5 years out. You have a very tough time finding people who don't think they know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. 10 years, you'll find a lot of people who have projections. Probably a big one that I predict is coming is more and more people will pick up 2033 as kind of the goal, because that's 2,000 years since the resurrection. That'll be, that sells, it'll be. I remember and I'm Baptist, so we're going to reach everybody by the year 2000. And then what happened in the year 2000? We, Y2K, and everything was distracted. And then, Vision 2020. Nothing sells better than Vision 2020. Come on. It's vision, and it's 2020. Come on. And then what were we doing in 2020? We were wondering where our next roll of toilet paper was going to come from. And we were locked in our houses because of COVID. So I don't, like 2033, 2050, those are just kind of timelines to help us start thinking and looking at signals. So I don't obsess about when it's going to happen, as much as I kind of try to see what is the Kairos moment for now, and what is the one that's coming.
I wish. So this stuff is very fascinating to me. I don't know. There may be some pastors that have tuned out by now, but I don't care. But we could just keep going. But I would love to pick your brain on politics. We don't do that here.
Right.
But you have a podcast. What's the name of your podcast, and what do you talk about on the podcast?
I generally don't talk about politics there. I just talk about signals, and we sit down and talk with topics like that. Maybe we could do a podcast about politics together, if that's what you want to talk about.
I'm no expert at it. I just wondered.
My podcast is called Signal Cafe, and it's just people thinking through the different things. Like I just dropped a podcast on uh, is your AI chatbot sentient, and we talked about that, and then we talked about the idea of environmental, because ministry leaders are often not, they're suspicious of environmental for good reason, environmental politics and ideology and stuff like that. But we talked about there's such a thing as creation care, and what does that look like? So we talk about different kind of topics like that. Whenever I do my Foresight Labs, I don't bring my opinions. I try to bring the tools and let people have the conversations.
Yeah. All right. So it's Signal Cafe.
Signal Cafe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the podcast. Where can people find you on a website somewhere? I mean, I found you on LinkedIn, but tell me some ways people can, see more of what you're doing and stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm posting a lot of time on LinkedIn with some signals and some just analysis for my own scanning. I try to do horizon scanning every day, share a little bit of it. But my website, Forbes Nonprofit Strategies, is forbesstrategies.com. My name is spelled just like the magazine, only I don't have that kind of money.
Oh, bummer.
Or any kind of money when you come to think of it. Just a Forbes.
You're in ministry, that's why.
Yeah. I do signal. I do list my signals. I think Forbes are, forever doomed to making lists. So,
So, okay. So, Signal Cafe, and then the website. One more time on the website.
ForbesStrategies.com.
All right. Okay. All right. We got that going on there. Steve, anything else before we let our guest go back to doing what he does?
Appreciate you being here. It's very interesting to me too.
Yeah. Steve is actually our founder and CEO of StreamingChurch.tv. The company's JSL Solutions. And it's 25 years ago, I think, Steve, right? In July, it'll be 25 years that you started JSL Solutions. August. All right. Well, August, July. Stop being so specific. But anyhow, I just want to say hats off to him, Chris, because he was very good at thinking ahead. And well, he was. I mean, the stuff he did with myflock.com, which
I'm good at being ahead of things. My timing is usually too early.
Well, we were talking about, you talked about the curve, it's like but with what we did at myflock.com, or what he did, I was involved in some small degree, and then streamingchurch.tv in 2009 or whatever. And then we've done mobile apps. We got other things going on too. A lot of it's AI stuff. And, but it's sometimes it takes a while for people to catch up. And anyhow, I'm rambling on here, but Dr. Chris Forbes has been our guest today on the Church Solutions podcast. I find it fascinating. I do agree with what you were saying. Pastors, people in ministry, you got to take some time out this week, and just really spend some quiet time. And I know we talk about quiet time in ministry all the time, but get specific about it and spend some time and let that happen. And again, we'd love to have you on again sometime, Chris. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, if you have not subscribed to the Church Solutions podcast, folks, what are you waiting for? You can get it wherever you get your favorite podcast. Check us out. Give us a rating. Let us know what you think. You can always go to, if you want to reach out to us, one of the ways is streamingchurch.tv, which I mentioned earlier. You can chat with us and, reach out to us there. So we're done here. Thank you, Dr. Forbes. Thank you, Steve Lacey. I'm Phil Thompson, and thank you for watching or listening to the Church Solutions podcast. Please take care of yourself and each other, and we will catch you again on another episode.